Imagine living the dream: six-figure salary, perfect marriage, and a picture-perfect life. But what if the perfect couple is just an illusion? Here's how everything fell apart. I'm Ryan, 32, and I was married to Emily, 30, for 6 years. Everyone thought we were perfect, the epitome of couple goals. I'm a senior project manager at a top firm, pulling in six figures, working insane hours to give Emily the lifestyle she'd always wanted. Looking back, I realize I saw our relationship as a project, a deliverable to be perfected. But let me be clear, Emily's influencer career? That wasn't some organic miracle. I built that platform for her. When we first got married, Emily was lost. She drifted, flitting from pottery classes to amateur photography, racking up bills on my credit card with each fleeting passion. There was a constant, low-level anxiety that gnawed at me. It wasn't just the money. It was the lack of direction. It felt like I was carrying the weight of both our futures. Given my social status, I've always believed that a successful man deserves a partner who is equally accomplished. I didn't want her to just sit at home shopping or scrolling aimlessly on her phone. I wanted her to have something meaningful. That's when I nudged her towards social media. I recognized her natural charm, her photogenic smile, her ease in front of a camera. It was a canvas, and I saw potential. I invested in her brand, bought her the best camera equipment, paid for classes on photography and video editing, even covered the cost of her first marketing campaigns to grow her audience. Every time she needed a new outfit for a photo shoot or tickets to some exclusive event, I made it happen. I worked extra hours, sacrificed vacations, and lived with constant stress so she could build this dream. I thought I was being supportive, empowering her. Maybe I was also trying to mold her into the person I thought she should be. And it worked, initially. Her follower count skyrocketed, brands started reaching out, and she was finally doing something she loved, or at least that's what I thought. She began attending galas and charity events, and seemed to blossom in the spotlight. It was wonderful to see her confidence grow, and to be honest, I enjoyed the reflected glory. For a while, we were the golden couple, our lives a carefully curated highlight reel. The cracks started showing subtly, about 2 months ago. At first, it was little things. Emily started pulling away emotionally and physically. She'd be glued to her phone during dinner, laughing at memes or texting someone constantly. She stopped posting pictures with me on her social media. In fact, she went so far as to archive all the photos that showed we were married. "It's better for the brand," she'd say when I asked about it. It stung, but I figured she knew her business, and I wanted to be the supporting husband. Maybe I was too focused on her image to see what was happening to us. I noticed other changes too. She started dressing differently, edgier, like she was trying to appeal to a younger, single audience. She was going to more influencer events, ones that ran late into the night, and always insisted they were just for networking. I'd wake up at 2 a.m., to find the bed empty and hear her creeping back into the house, claiming it was just work stuff. I didn't want to come off as insecure or controlling, so I let it slide, convincing myself I was imagining things. Part of me just didn't want to acknowledge the truth that was staring me in the face. Then, one night, she sat me down in the living room. She looked nervous, chewing her lips, her phone face down on the table, a rare sight. "We need to talk," she said, avoiding eye contact. I've had enough experience with bad news to know nothing good comes from that phrase. I remember the way the lamplight reflected in her nervous eyes. "What's going on?" I asked, already bracing myself. She took a deep breath and said, "I've been thinking a lot about us, and I think we should try an open marriage." I just stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. It was like my brain short-circuited. "An open marriage?" I repeated, making sure I heard her right. I felt the weight of all my sacrifices, all the extra hours, crushing me. She nodded quickly, like she'd rehearsed this. "It could be good for us. Think about it, we're both so busy, you with work, me with my brand. This way we can explore and still stay together. It could make us stronger." She reached for my hand, but I instinctively pulled away. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Explore?" I said, my voice sharp. "Are you serious right now, Emily? We've been married for 6 years. I've been killing myself working to give you the life you want, and now you're telling me you want to sleep with other people." Her face fell, like she didn't expect me to react that way. "It's not just about that," she said quickly. "It's about freedom and connection. It's not that I don't love you." There was a strange disconnect between her words and her expression. Her eyes were desperate, but her tone was almost clinical. "Stop," I interrupted. "Just stop. Do you even hear yourself? How is this supposed to make us stronger? You're basically saying I'm not enough for you." The truth was, I think, that I was starting to feel that way too. The constant pressure to provide, to succeed, was taking its toll. "That's not what I mean," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. I feel like we've grown apart, and this could help." I stood up, needing to put some space between us. My head was spinning, but her words were starting to connect some dots. The hidden social media posts, the late nights, the sudden wardrobe change, it all made sense now. She was already acting like she wasn't married. How long had this been going on in her mind? Was there already someone else? A cold dread washed over me. Was I really that blind? "Ryan, please," she said, standing up and reaching for my arm. "We can talk about it. We can set boundaries." "No," I said firmly, pulling away. "I'm not interested in boundaries or whatever else you think this is. I married you because I wanted a life with you, not with you and whoever else you decide to bring into our bed. If this is what you want, we're done." My voice was shaking, but my resolve was solid. Her jaw dropped. "You're seriously ending our marriage over this?" "You ended it the moment you thought this was okay," I said. "Pack your stuff and go." She stared at me like I'd slapped her, but I was done. The woman I married wouldn't have even considered something like this. The person standing in front of me was a stranger, someone who valued her social media clout and superficial freedom more than the life we built together. It was a betrayal not just of our vows, but of everything I thought we stood for. That night, she packed a bag and left for her parents' house. For the first time in weeks, things made sense. After that night, I shut the door on my marriage and didn't look back. It was a clean break, as far as I was concerned. But I wasn't about to mope. I've always been someone who handles problems head on, and this was no different. The next morning, Emily blew up my phone. Her voicemails were a mix of sobbing apologies and desperate bargaining. "Ryan, please, let's talk," one message said. "I didn't mean it, I was just overwhelmed and trying to figure things out." Another said, "You're throwing away everything we built. I love you, can't we fix this?" I deleted them all without listening to the rest. You don't come back from suggesting an open marriage, not with me anyway. My standards aren't negotiable. She had to learn that the hard way. The truth was, I wasn't sure who I was angry with, Emily, or myself for enabling her. Her texts kept coming though. At first, they were frantic. "I made a mistake. You're my everything." When I didn't respond, they turned defensive. "You're overreacting," she wrote. I was just trying to be honest about my feelings. Isn't that what a marriage is supposed to be about? The audacity? Honesty? She hadn't been honest in months, not with me or herself. One text said, "After everything I've sacrificed for you, you're really going to throw it all away?" Sacrificed? That one made me laugh out loud. I'd been the one sponsoring her influencer career, paying for her classes, her gear, her endless wardrobe. If anyone sacrificed, it was me. I started to resent how I had been used as a pawn for Emily's dream. I vented to Mike about it over drinks. He didn't hold back. "She's delusional," he said, shaking his head. "You gave her a life most people can only dream about, and she wants what? To screw around and call it freedom?" Mike helped me see it for what it was, a complete lack of respect. "Exactly," I said. "I'm not playing that game." A few days later, Rachel, one of Emily's closest friends, called me. "Ryan, I know it's none of my business, but Emily's really hurting. She misses you." Rachel had always been a good friend to both of us, and it was hard to turn my back on her. "She should have thought about that before she tried to rewrite the rules of our marriage," I said bluntly. "I'm done, Rachel. Tell her to move on." Rachel sighed. "She knows she screwed up. She keeps saying she just wants to talk to you, to fix things." "Too little, too late," I said. She made her bed. A few weeks went by, and the messages slowed. Emily's Instagram, though, that was a different story. She started posting nonstop, all these glossy photos of her new journey. Empowerment quotes, spa days, and luxury retreats filled her feed. It was all so fake. I wasn't even looking for it, but a coworker showed me one of her posts during lunch. "Isn't this your ex?" she asked, holding up her phone. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. New beginnings." It was a facade. I knew that Emily was far from empowered and free. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, that's her. Guess she's thriving. I could feel my colleagues' pitying gaze, but the big news came from Mike, who called me a few nights later. "You're not going to believe this," he said, barely able to contain his laughter. I ran into one of Emily's influencer buddies at the gym. Apparently, she's been bragging about some guy named Brad, calling him her mentor. "Brad?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal wash over me. Yeah, some big shot entrepreneur, Mike said. Her friend said Emily's been leaning on him a lot lately. Sounds fishy to me. That name rang a bell. Later, I connected the dots. Brad was the guy I'd seen commenting on her posts, always throwing in flirty compliments. From what Mike shared, Brad didn't even know Emily was married. He thought she was just another influencer trying to make it big. It was all coming together, and the pieces formed a terrible picture. The picture was clear. She'd lined up her escape plan long before she sat me down for that conversation about an open marriage. Strangely, I didn't feel angry. I felt validated. She hadn't wanted an open marriage because she was overwhelmed or searching for meaning. She'd wanted one because she already had one foot out the door. And now it was clear she hadn't even been honest with the man she'd lined up to replace me. And I felt more determined than ever to expose the woman who had used and manipulated me for so long. Emily tried to reach out again a week later. Her desperation was palpable. Ryan, I made a huge mistake, her voicemail said. Brad isn't what I thought he was. None of this is what I thought it was. Can we please just talk? The truth was, I had no desire to talk to Emily, or to hear any more of her lies. Her calls kept coming, voicemails piling up with pleas about how she wanted to come back, how she didn't realize what she had until it was gone. She even sent a handwritten letter, something she'd never done before, telling me how she felt like she'd ruined the best thing in her life. This only strengthened my resolve to pursue my plan. What I found hilarious, though, was Emily's sudden change of tone. She started blowing up my phone again, but this time it wasn't just about us. Ryan, I really need to talk to you about the sponsorship for the retreat, she said in one voicemail. It's so important for my career. Please don't cancel it. The retreat, a big influencer event she had been planning for months. It was a project I had bankrolled from the start. Venue, catering, promotions, everything. Pulling the plug would hit her hard, and after everything, I couldn't justify keeping my name attached to it. I called the event organizers the same day and withdrew all funding. The consequences were the only thing that mattered to Emily. When Emily found out, she spiraled. Suddenly, her pleas weren't about the marriage or her feelings. They were all about saving face. Ryan, you can't do this to me, she screamed in one voicemail. This retreat is everything I've worked for. Do you know how this will make me look? She never cared about the marriage, she only cared about how all of this was affecting her brand. It became painfully obvious she wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was just sorry it was affecting her. As for Brad, I found out through Rachel that Emily hadn't broken things off with him. She was still stringing him along while pretending to regret her choices. Typical. She was trying to have it both ways, and now she was watching it all fall apart. Rachel began to see the truth about Emily. I felt like I had the upper hand. The life we'd built might be over, but Emily was realizing that I was the one who had built it. Without me, her perfect little influencer world was crumbling, and there wasn't a filter in the world that could fix it. But it still wasn't enough. Emily needed to be stopped before she could hurt anyone else. I wasn't about to let Emily's betrayal end with me being the only one in the dark. Brad deserved to know the truth, and I was going to make sure he heard it straight from me. This wasn't just about exposing Emily, it was about preventing her from doing this to someone else. After some digging, I found his contact information through mutual connections on LinkedIn. I sent him a simple, professional-sounding message. Hi Brad, I'm Ryan, Emily's husband. I believe there are some things you should know. Can we meet? The truth was, I was also planning to extract some form of revenge on Emily. To my surprise, Brad responded quickly. We set up a meeting at a coffee shop downtown. When I walked in, I spotted him immediately. Tall, sharp-dressed, with an air of confidence that screamed success. He looked up from his laptop, clearly puzzled when he saw me. The look on his face made me feel a small spark of satisfaction. Ryan? He asked, standing to shake my hand. That's me, I said, sitting across from him. Thanks for agreeing to meet. He looked wary but curious. So, what's this about? I leaned in, lowering my voice. Brad, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Emily and I have been married for 6 years. His eyes widened. Married? She told me she was single? He looked shocked, betrayed, and even a little bit embarrassed. I figured as much, I said, pulling out my phone and scrolling to a wedding photo. I placed it on the table. That's us, 2 years ago at a friend's wedding. She's been hiding our marriage from her followers, and apparently from you too. Brad's face turned pale as he studied the photo. I had no idea. She always made it seem like she was focused on her career, too busy for a serious relationship. The lies piled up, and his face grew more and more crestfallen. I nodded. That's part of her brand. But the truth is, I've been the one funding her influencer career from day one. Cameras, events, outfits, you name it, I paid for it. And now she's trying to rewrite her life story to erase me. I could see the gears turning in his head. He was starting to understand the scale of Emily's deception. Brad leaned back, clearly shaken. Why are you telling me this? He looked at me, trying to gauge my intentions. Because she's using you, I said bluntly. And I thought you deserved to know. But more than that, I have a plan, and I think you'll want to be part of it. A plan? He asked, his eyebrows raising. He seemed intrigued, but also cautious. I laid it out for him. Together, we could expose Emily's lies to her followers. With Brad's inside knowledge and my receipts of everything I'd done for her career, we had all the ammunition we needed. I spoke with calm conviction, making it clear that I would not tolerate any dissent. Think about it, I said. She's built her entire image on transparency and authenticity. The moment people find out she's been lying about her personal life, her credibility is gone. Brad stared at me for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right, I'm in. But on one condition, I want nothing to do with her after this. The one condition I was perfectly fine with. I said, shaking his hand. Deal. Let's make this count. The truth was, I felt like I had nothing to lose. I had already lost my marriage, my life, and my dreams for the future. At least I could ensure that Emily never got to do this to anyone else. The conversation with Brad didn't just give me relief. It felt like the first real step in taking control. Here was someone else who had been dragged into Emily's web of lies, and now we had a common goal. To expose the truth. We both wanted revenge. I left the coffee shop that day feeling lighter, with a renewed sense of purpose. I kept thinking about how Emily had built her entire career and life on this fake image of perfection. People adored her, looked up to her as some kind of role model. The thought of shattering that illusion felt huge and satisfying. This wasn't just going to hurt her, it was going to completely dismantle her life. The next day, Brad and I started outlining our approach. We decided to meet again, this time at his place. When I arrived, he'd already started pulling together some of the messages Emily had sent him. We put our heads together, planning our next move. Check this out, he said, sliding his laptop across the table. I leaned over and read through a series of flirty texts. She'd called him her rock and gushed about how much she appreciated his support. It made me sick to my stomach. The messages weren't explicit, but they were manipulative. She'd clearly been stringing him along, playing the part of the ambitious, single influencer who just needed a little guidance. This is gold, I said, scrolling through the screenshots. But we need more if we're going to make this stick. This was just the beginning. I've got more, Brad said, pulling up another folder on his computer. This one was full of photos from events they'd attended together. She'd always posed strategically, making sure to crop out her ring or avoid any shots that might suggest she wasn't single. Unbelievable, I muttered. She's been doing this for months, hasn't she? I could not imagine how Emily had found the time to plan this. Brad nodded. At least. Honestly, I feel like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. I could hear the regret in his voice. You're not an idiot, I said. She's good at this. It's what she does. But now we're going to turn the tables. There was no turning back. We spent hours that day organizing everything. I pulled up my own files. Financial records, old photos, even emails from when I'd first helped her get started. The deeper we dug, the clearer it became that Emily had been planning this for a long time. She'd started phasing me out of her life well before she brought up the idea of an open marriage. It wasn't about exploration or freedom, it was about crafting a narrative that didn't include me. The more we gathered, the more enraged I became. By the end of the day, we had a mountain of evidence. Brad leaned back in his chair, looking exhausted but satisfied. All right, he said. What's the next move? There was a look of excitement on his face. We sit on this for now, I said. I want to make sure we do this right. No rush decisions. I had to be in perfect control. Brad nodded. Agreed. This has to be airtight. Brad knew what was at stake for both of us. Emily thought she was untouchable, and honestly, it was hilarious. The arrogance, the overconfidence, it oozed out of everything she did. She wasn't smart, she was just so full of herself that she assumed everyone else was too dumb to notice her schemes. She thought she'd outsmarted me, outmaneuvered Brad, and built herself this unshakable empire. But the truth was, she was as subtle as a brick to the face. The truth was she was a master of deception. Over the next week, Brad and I went to work. It wasn't just about collecting evidence, it was about connecting the dots, building the full picture of just how reckless Emily really was. Brad started with the digital side, screenshots of DMs, texts, and every painfully obvious move she'd made to hide her marriage from her followers. I took on the financials, receipts, invoices, bank transfers, all the proof of how much I'd poured into her influencer career. The depth of my financial support for Emily made me sick. The more we uncovered, the more pathetic her whole charade became. "Look at this," Brad said one night, pulling up a text Emily had sent him. In it, she called him her rock and thanked him for always being there. It was more of her false words. "She's ridiculous," I said, shaking my head. She said the exact same thing to me a month before she brought up the open marriage crap. It's like she's copy-pasting. She was a machine. "She thinks it's working," Brad said, rolling his eyes. "She's probably sitting somewhere right now patting herself on the back for being such a genius." I can imagine her self-satisfied smirking. The thing was, Emily didn't even bother covering her tracks properly. Her lies were sloppy, her manipulations obvious. She wasn't careful, she just assumed no one would call her out. Like at events where she'd crop her wedding ring out of photos but leave little details that anyone paying attention could spot. Or the way she'd flirt with Brad in text while asking me for money in the same breath. She wasn't smart, she was lazy. I am a fool for not seeing through her ruses. By midweek, we had a shared folder titled The Real Emily. It was packed with files, photos, incriminating texts, and financial records that laid bare how much of her career was built on my dime. Each file was like another nail in her coffin. Brad and I couldn't help but laugh at how easily the pieces came together. It was all too perfect. "She's going to lose it when this drops," Brad said, scrolling through the folder. "It will all be worth it. She'll probably try to spin it though." It was classic Emily. "Let her," I said. "She can't spin her way out of this. It's too much." The amount of evidence would be incontrovertible. The plan was simple. We'd start with the texts, let people see how fake she was. Then we'd follow up with the financials, showing how she'd used me as her personal ATM. The photos would come last, the final proof that her whole image was a lie. Emily thought she was untouchable. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. And I could not wait. By Friday, everything was ready. We timed it perfectly. Emily had a live Q&A scheduled for that weekend, the kind of event where she pretended to be real with her followers. It was the perfect moment to drop the bomb. "She's going to squirm," Brad said with a grin. I could not wait to see her break. "Good," I said. "Let's see how honest she really is." Emily thought she'd won. She was about to find out she'd been playing herself the whole time. And Brad and I would be there to make sure that she found out. When Saturday rolled around, Brad and I were ready to drop the hammer. Emily had hyped up her Q&A for days, posting story after story about how excited she was to connect with her followers. "Real talk, real transparency," she'd written in one post, paired with a glowing selfie. The audacity of it was almost laughable. It was all lies. Brad and I had timed everything perfectly. 30 minutes before her live session started, Brad uploaded the first wave of our evidence. It was subtle at first, screenshots of text between him and Emily, showing her flirtatious comments and manipulative behavior. We didn't even include captions. The screenshots spoke for themselves. I waited patiently to see her fall. Within minutes, the post started gaining traction. Comments flooded in, people tagging Emily and asking, "Is this real?" And "What's going on here?" Brad and I watched it all unfold from our separate screens, messaging each other updates like kids on Christmas morning. I felt giddy, waiting. "She's going to lose it," Brad texted. It was only a matter of time. "Good," I replied. "She deserves every second of this." Every single moment of her disgrace was well deserved. As the live Q&A started, Emily seemed oblivious to the storm brewing. She appeared on camera with her usual polished look, greeting her fans with a big smile. "Hey guys, I'm so excited to chat with you today. Let's keep it real, as always." The irony was delicious. A total lack of self-awareness. At first, the comments on her live were the usual fluff, people asking about her skincare routine or praising her outfit. But slowly, questions about Brad's post began popping up. "Emily, is it true you've been lying about your relationship?" one person asked. Another chimed in, "What's this about you hiding your marriage? It was just the beginning." Emily's smile faltered, but she kept going. "Okay, let's focus on the positive today, guys. This is a safe space, no drama," she said, laughing nervously. The sweat was beginning to pour down her face. Brad wasn't done. 10 minutes into her live, he posted the second wave. Photos of him and Emily at events, her ring strategically missing from every shot. He captioned it. The length some people will go to for their authentic image. The real Emily. It was as though the house of cards that Emily had built was about to come crashing down. The hashtag took off immediately. By the time Emily noticed, her live was flooded with people spamming number the real Emily and demanding answers. She started fumbling, trying to regain control. All right, let's take a little break and reset, she said, her voice shaking. The live abruptly ended. Brad and I were dying of laughter. She didn't even last 15 minutes. Brad texted. This was what they deserved. Classic Emily, I replied. All show, no substance. It was all nothing but an empty vessel. But we weren't done yet. While Emily scrambled to figure out her next move, I uploaded the final piece of evidence. The financial records. Screenshots of bank transfers, receipts for her camera equipment, invoices for the events I'd paid for, all labeled with a simple caption. Every empire has a foundation. This was hers. The real Emily. This would send her sinking. The internet exploded. Within hours, the real Emily was trending, and Emily's carefully curated image was in shambles. Brands she'd worked with started quietly unfollowing her, and her fans were turning against her in droves. Her world was being ripped apart. I'd expected Emily to call me, but she didn't. Instead, I got a message from Rachel, one of her closest friends. Ryan, I don't know what's going on, but Emily's having a meltdown. She's saying you and Brad are trying to ruin her life. Rachel was just beginning to see through Emily's lies. She ruined it herself, I replied. We just held up the mirror. It was not our fault. The silence from Emily lasted until the next morning, when I finally got a call from her. Her voice was unsteady, somewhere between rage and desperation. Ryan, what the hell have you done? She snapped. Expose the truth, I said calmly. Something you should have done a long time ago. She should have considered all of the consequences. You've destroyed everything, my career, my reputation. Why would you do this to me? Because you destroyed our marriage, I replied. You lied to me, to Brad, to everyone. Did you really think you could keep it up forever? She was too stupid to realize the extent of her failures. I can fix this, she said quickly. Just take it down and I'll make it right. The begging was pitiful. No, I interrupted. This isn't something you can fix. You wanted an empire built on lies. Now you can deal with the collapse. I was in complete control of the situation. Emily's sobs on the other end of the line didn't faze me. For the first time in months, I felt free. This was Emily's just punishment. By the end of the weekend, Emily had gone silent on social media. Her accounts were still up, but the comments were disabled, and her last post was from days before. The moment the divorce papers were filed, it was like cutting the last thread that tethered me to Emily's chaos. I'd given her enough chances to come clean, to be a decent person, and she'd squandered every single one of them. It wasn't just about the lies anymore, it was about reclaiming my life, my peace, and my dignity. Emily's reaction was as predictable as ever. The second she was served, my phone started blowing up. At first, the texts were angry. You can't be serious, you're really going to throw everything away over this. This is a mistake, Ryan, you're being petty and vindictive. Then, when I didn't respond, the tone shifted. I miss you. I don't know how I let things get this bad. Please, let's talk. You're my husband. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. It was classic Emily, full of empty promises and manipulative pleas, but this time I wasn't biting. I'd heard it all before, and I wasn't about to fall for it again. The divorce process was quick, thanks to the airtight evidence Brad and I had gathered, and thanks in the first place to the prenup I suggested signing before we got married. Emily didn't even try to fight it, probably because she knew she didn't stand a chance. One of the best moments came when my lawyer informed me that had agreed to the terms without contest. She'd get nothing, no alimony, no division of assets, nothing. Her influencer empire, such as it was, had crumbled to dust, and she was left scrambling to pick up the pieces. Emily had lost everything. Rachel called me a few days after the papers were finalized. Ryan, she's a mess, she said. She's been calling everyone, trying to figure out how to fix her image. She even mentioned reaching out to you again. Even after all of this, she still could not take accountability for her actions. Not my problem, I said. She made her bed. This was her karma. And that was the truth. Emily had spent years building her brand on lies, using people like disposable tools to climb her way to the top. Now, with no brand, no husband, and no backup plan, she was finally facing the consequences. A few weeks after the divorce, I ran into her at a coffee shop. She looked different. The polished, camera-ready facade was gone, replaced by someone who looked genuinely lost. She spotted me and hesitated, then walked over. "Ryan," she said softly. "Can we talk?" "There's nothing to talk about, Emily," I said, keeping my tone neutral. I had said everything I needed to say. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. I just want to say I'm sorry. For everything. I don't know what I was thinking." Emily's lack of self-awareness astounded me. I looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "I hope you figure things out," I said. Then I turned and walked away. I had no patience left for Emily's lies and manipulations. That was the last time I saw her. As far as I know, Emily's still trying to rebuild her life, but that's her journey, not mine. As for me, I've moved on. I'm focusing on my career, my friends, and myself. For the first time in years, the weight of Emily's lies is gone, and I'm finally free. Sometimes people ask if I regret it, exposing her, divorcing her, walking away. The answer is always the same, not for a second. Emily thought she could rewrite our story, but in the end, I took back the pen. I had finally achieved the control I needed.